Hello, everyone. I'm Elwin, and I'm an engineer, and I am so happy to be here with all of you. You are all makers. You're creators. You are doers. You have a passion for creating amazing products and services. And you know, we hack a lot of code, but for the next few minutes, what I want you to consider is what about hacking culture? What about hacking human systems? What about putting your efforts of making against that? I believe, more than ever, it's the best time ever for people like us. We are in fertile ground where we can affect change. There's this confluence of enablers that are happening right now that we can use for disruption. They're changing markets. There's a huge demand for talent like yourself. There's the amplification effect that happens with our tools and processes like never before. And most importantly, there is a desire to give back. There is a desire to lean into community and to be sustainable. This is a time for people like us, for people like you, to push against the barriers and to watch them fall. It is time for us to create the world that we want to live in. Imagine the possibilities. Now, I want you to take a moment here with me and just kind of think. Just kind of close your eyes and kind of fantasize, what does your ideal workplace look like? What is the work that you are doing? Who are your coworkers? Who are your mentors? Who are you mentoring? What are you creating? And what causes are you supporting? I want you to hold on to that image for a minute because we'll come back to it. We need it later. But now I'm going to talk a little bit about how business used to be. Now, if we wanted to be big, if you wanted to have impact, you needed to build massive infrastructure. And that was infrastructure that was physical, it was digital, and it was financial. And this infrastructure became the barriers to entry that kept people out of your marketplace. They needed to make big behemoths as well to be able to compete with you. Now in retail, we had our barriers. Our barriers were our massive supply chain, our real estate holdings, and our relationship with manufacturers. But you know, now in this marketplace right now, there's disruption happening to all of these physical barriers or these barriers. They're being broken down. You don't need to have real estate to be an effective retailer. You don't need to have a massive supply chain. There are other people with other massive supply chains that you can mash up. And today, things like Kickstarter, they are breaking down barriers to relationships with manufacturers. Not only do they give you a funding source, but they give you a direct relationship with manufacturers like no one has had before. Another thing that's happening that I think is really important, especially in the DevOps movement today, is there's an amplification effect that's happening with the tools and the processes that we're doing. Now, many of you out there know that a 10x developer is rare. It's a rare unicorn, but I'll tell you they exist. But a 10x team is not rare. I could take a team of 10, and many of you are doing this, and use the DevOps tools that we have and the social connections and be able to create a team that acts like 100 or even 1,000. Huge amounts of impact. If big companies don't start acting agile, and I use agile like a lowercase a, they will fail. Big companies must evolve or they will die. The big companies carry the burdens of our legacy systems, our processes, and most important, our culture. They build cultures that are great tactical executors. They're cultures that are great at care and feeding of their own legacy machines. But they have forgotten how to enroll, how to care, and how to feed people like us, the makers. To succeed, we need to transform. But I hate the word transformation. This is what it looks like, and this is what it feels like. I'm an engineer, so I solve problems. So let me try to explain the problem to you so we can talk about solving it. Let me define that problem. Target wants to thrive in markets that are smarter and faster than we are. And I don't think this is unique to Target. We all need to thrive in markets that are faster and smarter than we are. Now, see, this isn't panic. This is a challenge. And this is a challenge that we can face. Because today we are in a moment where we as makers, where we as creators can influence corporations, markets, and create real change. If we're bold and we push against the walls just might fall. Now, this isn't just talk. Over the last 3 years, I was given a gift to experience this. I was given a gift to be able to be part of a transformation in a large organization. And I want to broaden that challenge to all of you. Companies today are in a war for talent like us. And in order to join me to effect the change that we're talking about, we have to be clear about what we want. What do we want? So what does talent want? What do I want? What were you imagining at the beginning of this talk? Well, for me, I want to work for a cause. It's important for me to work for a company and for a cause and for a mission that I believe in. I want to work with other talented people like yourself, people who challenge me, people who push me, people who are fun to work with, talented, creative, and passionate, like all of you out there. I want a company culture that knows how to care and feed people like us. I want a company culture with a mission that I believe in and with a space that's comfortable. I don't want to be working in a cube farm or a code factory. I want to work in a workshop. I want to work with collaboration. I want to solve difficult problems. We're all about problem solving. I want to be a contributor. I want to be accountable for the work that I do. Now, I was told something about a year ago from a friend of mine, and he said, Elwin, I know why you love to create things. I know why you love to make things. He says, because you make things in order to give. And I want you to think about that, because I think that's a very important thing. You are creating to give. Now, how do I know all of this? I know all of this because this is what happened to me. This is the story of one engineer who helped start a movement in a large company. Now, I was at Target for many years, 13 in fact, back in 93 to 2005. I got a chance to work with some of the most awesome people around. They were amazing mentors. They were people who created the brand that disrupted retail at the time. Amazing, amazing givers. In 93, Target was the little guys. We were part of a corporate ecosystem of retail. There was companies like Dayton Hudson Corporation, which was the mother corporation. We owned Marshall Field's, we owned Mervyn's, we owned B. Dalton bookstores, and a whole pile of other real estate stuff. And Target was only a small piece of this. But we had a test and learn culture. And yes, we had a hierarchy, but everyone on that hierarchy had open doors. And more importantly, they had open minds. We worked for a cause. And what was that cause? That cause was to help you, our neighbors. We provided value and awesome design and amazing products for you, our neighbors. We provided great jobs for our neighbors who are our team members. We created strong partnerships with vendors who are our neighbors. And more importantly than anything, and unique to many Fortune 50 companies, is we gave back 5% of our pre-tax profits to our communities of neighbors. This was a cause and an awesome mission that I still believe in. Now, around 1994, I got called into a boardroom with a bunch of other Target people, and around this big boardroom table, there were all these people in fancy suits. And we at Target, we dressed casually. I had jeans and a t-shirt on. And a bunch of us come into this room, and there's no seats for us. There's no seats around the table. So we stand along the wall. And somebody chuckles who has a suit and sitting in the table, and he goes, "Oh, don't worry about them. They're our red and khaki brigade. They're Target." And I remember smiling and thinking to myself, "Oh yeah? We're going to eat your lunch." Around 2005, I left to be a CIO of a Chinese manufacturing company. My wife and I moved to China for 3 years. It was an amazing experience. Everyone should do it. We came back to the States. I worked with a friend with a startup, Code 42. They make a product called Crash Plan, and was CTO for a small company in Minnesota before I found my way back to Target. Well, in 2013, a few years ago, I came back to Target, and it was a completely changed place. You know, the retail ecosystem had become a monoculture. They had jettisoned all of those other things to focus on growth in Target. And growth in Target it did. It grew to $70 billion during that time. Our stock ticker went from DHC to TGT, and we were all required to wear suits. Yes, even the engineers. We had grown to 1,800 stores, and we bound ourselves in chains of over-collaboration and fear of change. We had lost much of our engineering strength, and I actually think this is a thing that a number of companies are facing out right now. We became an IT organization of definers, not doers, because we fell into the trap where if you define the problem well enough, you could commoditize getting it done. Well, that doesn't work. That doesn't work now. It was such a change. We had forgotten much of who we were and what we had done and how we did it. And it's kind of funny because I was called into a meeting. It was an acquisition meeting. It was one of the first acquisitions that we had done in years. Back in the early days, we did a lot of acquisitions. So I went into that meeting, and it was a big table, and a bunch of the Target people were sitting around one side, all in suits, and I was wearing my suit. And I sat down, and 2 guys came in, both in cutoffs and T-shirts, and they sit down at the other end of the table, and we start talking. And I look on their face, and there's a smirk on their face. And I look over at me in my suit, on the side of with all the other suits, and I'm like, oh my God, how did I get here? I'm one of those suits around the table, and I know exactly what those guys are thinking. They're thinking, I'm gonna eat your lunch. And it was much more fun being on the other side of that table before, I'll tell you that much. How could we find our way back to our roots and move forward as a company? What prevents people from changing? You know, ultimately, it's fear and uncertainty. And we all know about the innovator's dilemma, and I'm not going to talk about that, but that's another thing. But I made it my mission that day when I was sitting around with the suits, and I saw the smirks on those guys' faces, to create a place where I wanted to come to work, right? And I wanted to enlist anybody who would be willing to help me. So I started asking a few basic questions. It goes back to the questions that I was asking you to think about earlier today. What does a healthy ecosystem look like? How can we incorporate what talent wants so that we can attract and retain the best people and make the coolest teams? How can we remember that we are the ones that create the machine and we are not cogs in the machine? What did the space need to look like? What did a workshop look like versus a code factory? How would we work together? Business, ultimately it's this. You guys know, it's a DevOps thing. You all are doing it anyway. It's the business sitting together with the technologist, working together. I don't care what model you use, whether it's Agile, Scrum, Kanban, Lean, it doesn't matter. But you're working together, you're building empathy, you're building great products. The first thing I realized when I came back to Target, and this is something I would give advice to any of you who are going into a new company, you must find the doers. You must find the other makers. You must join force and collaborate. Now, these doers, they don't have to work for you, and they might not be working for you in these companies, but they have to want to work with you. So the first thing I did is I ran around, and by the way, these doers are not often found if you look at the hierarchy. They're not at the upper part of the corporate hierarchy. They're down around over here. These are the people that you need to access code repositories and who have their hands on the infrastructure. The people, when you need them, you know who to go to, right? I started finding them, and when I was looking at Target at that time, I found that they were underappreciated, they were demotivated, and they were scared. And I remember that I wanted to create a community and a mailing list that would connect us all together. And one of the people came up to me and he said, Elwin, I am not going to be on any list because being on a list is dangerous. So I thought, my gosh, how am I going to connect people and motivate them and know that I love the doers? So what I did is I minted a coin. This is a challenge coin. And this coin is the Rebel Alliance coin. I created a secret society, the Rebel Alliance, Jedis who would overthrow the Empire. And what I did is I gave these out when I recognized that somebody's a doer, and I made them a Jedi. And it's a flat organization. If you're a Jedi, you make other Jedis. So they got a pile of coins. But there's rules, because this is earned, it's not given. You must demonstrate that you can do. You've got to be able to do. You must have done something recently, because that eliminates the sleepers. You must know the rules, and you have to be willing to break the rules to do the right thing, to be a member. Now, ultimately, no one really knows who all are Rebel Alliance members. But what I will say is that was a way to connect and motivate and show that we appreciate these people who are underappreciated. And that's what you need to do. You need to enroll people. So then the second thing is, I'm an engineer. You got to show me, don't tell me. And I knew I had to show the organization. So what I did is I created a team. It was a small team. We called it RAD. And the idea was to be the prototype. I knew that if I could get 7 or 8 people like yourself, real strong makers, people who are design thinking, digital, I say T-shaped engineers. These are people who are very creative and they can get deep in a specific domain fast. And if I got them together with the business, wonderful things could happen. So what we did is we created small teams and small pods, and we invited the business to come in with their ideas, and we said we would do your ideas. But there were table stakes. The table stakes to bring your idea to us was you got to sit around the table. So one of our first things we did, and we did this in a different way of doing things. I mean, we had an open space, and we were working with agile and lean processes, and working with the business, sitting together with the technologists. What we did during the first MVP was 2 months it took, 6 weeks. The company thought it was going to take a year, the business partners we were working with. And when we put it live 6 weeks later, it was responsible for $300,000 worth of incremental sales that week. We did that in 6 weeks. Now, we did a whole bunch of other MVPs and a whole bunch of other projects, but it isn't about the projects, and it isn't even about RAD. What happened is the business who was sitting with us when they were doing these MVPs, when they went back to their old way of doing it, they saw how wrong it was. I got a call from one of the business leaders who had lived with our RAD team for about 2 months, and after she went back to her team, she said, Elwin, I can't work in my team anymore. I can't work the way that we're working. I need to work the way we were working. And that was the idea. The idea is to create a model that infects the organization. This did, in fact, affect the organization. RAD became the model that was the tip of the spear that we did the next organizational change. I worked with Target.com to change Target.com into a product organization. We needed to hire 150 engineers into Minnesota, the tundra, and bring them together with the business, working in pods of product teams, with the product owners, with the engineers, with Scrum Masters, all sitting together and creating. In order to enroll and to enlist all of these engineers, I needed to kind of define what they were, because I needed to tell our executives what are the kind of people that we need to bring on. So we created a manifesto that talked about our beliefs and culture, and I think all of you should do something like this. So this is it. It was 4 points. We do meaningful work that makes people's lives better. We do this through personal problem solving. We do it with humility and optimism, and a united team effort. We are you. From there, you can make a banner, and you kind of can make swag, and we all know how important swag is. But I want to say that it's more important than you think. It's not just people wearing your t-shirts. They're waving your flag. The right banner, the right thing that makes somebody want to wear your t-shirt, right, turns your guests, your customers into champions, your vendor partners into evangelists, and your shareholders into flag bearers. Ultimately, we had infected the organization. These product teams, we did it through digital. We were able to rewrite 60% of .com's core infrastructure into open source. We were working in a DevOps model with product teams. We did this in under 18 months. And today, our entire IT organization is running like a product model, and we reduced our hierarchy from 40 layers down to 10. You heard Jim refer to Gandhi this morning. And I want to lean on Gandhi myself and issue another challenge to you. I want you, as makers, to be the change you want to see in the world. Earlier, you heard me talk about Target's challenge coins, the Rebel Alliance coins. If you were one of the first 3,500 people into this auditorium, you got a challenge coin. Now, this coin is earned, it is not given. It is meant to represent the challenge of being a catalyst. I need you to go back to your organizations and find the doers. Be the catalyst. Make the changes. And let's change the world together. Thank you.